25 years ago, my mentors at the Green River Glass Club helped me do my first glass show. 25 years later, they're having me back to talk about what today's collectors of antique and vintage glass are looking for, and I'm so excited to share that with them and with you.
I remember when I was the new glass kid and a lot of you were teaching me things and I was all enthused. Well, we have a new generation of people. Some of them are in their 60s and 70s, but a lot of 30 and 40-year-olds who are discovering glass. I have a friend named Jocelyn, and she is known as the Crazy Lamp Lady. She is in her mid-30s. She is the biggest vintage YouTube channel on there. She loves glass. And because she loves glass and talks about it, a whole lot of other young people are starting to really be interested in glass, which I think is very exciting for all of us who had been into it for a long time. Some of the things that we are seeing are popular with people who are starting glass collections today, particularly art glass, and particularly color. They love color. And there is obviously nostalgia for what they grew up with as well, but they're also discovering some things that I wouldn't have necessarily thought to look for. So I'm going to start with a few studio pieces that are by companies that maybe you know, or maybe will be surprises to you, but they are definitely of interest to new people today. This is sandblast. It's not really cameo in the way we think of the old carved cameo. And this has a signature on the bottom of it from 1990. Well, 1990 doesn't seem very old to a lot of us who've been collecting for a long time. But 1990, if you're 35 years old, well, that's when you were born. So to them, this seems old, and this is what they grew up with, or at least it seems vintage is the proper word. I picked this up because I was at a show in New York, and I thought, this is very, very 1980s looking. Lots of design. It's satin, it's deco. It's also a basic type of carved glass like cameo. And that seems to be something that I think is starting to get attention. But some other things they really like Oreos in Flume. And I do too. This is from 1984. And this particular little fish, this is something that when it came out new was selling for a lot of money. It's even got its original pamphlet. And these were selling for about $300 when they were new. And they're really starting to sell for about the original issue price now because a lot of younger people really like the studio glass. This is Lundberg Studios. Some of these people may be familiar to you because Lundberg and Charles Lawton and some of those folks, we used to have them come up and do presentations back in the time when these things were contemporary, where Charles Lawton is no longer with us. A lot of these people are in their late phases of producing or they've retired. There's one named Robert Held up in Vancouver Island who's just retired. And lots of people are interested in his work, and you'll see that around here. And the prices are not cheap. Again, this Lundberg Studios piece, and it's got a little mark on the bottom there, the signature. And definitely they're looking for signatures. These younger collectors are aware to look for signed etched signatures on the bottom of things. There's one named Stuart Abelman who's still producing in California. There was a group that all sort of learned together at UC Berkeley back in the late 60s, early 70s. I guess they had a glass program. And a lot of them went back to wherever they were from, started studios. Well, this is Robert Iold. And Robert Iold did a lot of paperweights and orbs. And my friend Jocelyn, who is, as they say, an influencer, is really into paperweights and orbs. And so now all of a sudden, a lot of these are starting to sell for big prices. This one is probably in the $175 to $200 range, and it has the Iold mark on the bottom. Iold was from Columbus, Ohio. He moved back to Columbus, Ohio, had his studio there until about 5 or 7 years ago, and now he's retired. And a whole lot of these people are either at retirement age or on the verge of it. And so they are an up-and-coming area for younger collectors. So definitely studio signed glass pieces. This is another Orient in Flume here. The little panda there. I think that's just sort of cute. He's so squat. There is one particular designer by name of Sellers, and Sellers is definitely a sought-after design. So this is another Orient and Flume piece, and you'll see obviously that they were very influenced by Art Nouveau style. So much so that at a certain point, not to be outdone, Fenton Glass decided to do a few things also in Art Nouveau style, and this has the signature on the bottom for Dave Fetty. And for those of you who are Fenton aficionados, you probably know the name Dave Fetty. He worked his way up essentially from working on the factory floor to being one of their lead glass blowers and designers. He just retired from glass blowing about 3 months ago at the age of 85. I got to meet him and interview him a couple of years ago, and he was really fascinating. And just the fact that he was able to do all this. He's known for some of their hanging heart slides. It's always very fun for me when I have a young person. I just sold 2 hanging hearts pieces at a show in Ohio a couple of weeks ago, and they were very excited. Oh, hanging hearts. Yes, I love them. Oh, Fenton made them. And I said, have you ever seen the Imperial? Imperial, what's that? So I showed them a picture of 1920s Imperial hanging hearts, and they were stunned to know that, oh, that's been around for 100 years. They just assumed everything started with Fenton. Another area that we see interest in is anything by Blanco Blast. And it's nice to see because Blenko, of course, has had its ups and downs. Blanco was really popular when I started collecting. It remained pretty popular, but the company went through some really hard times. I believe they went through a bankruptcy. They were taken over. I believe the manager is Dean Six, who had written the book on Blanco. He's retired. He is retired now. Very good. But he helped with them trying to come back. I believe Kelsey Murphy was designing for them for a while. They've had a bunch of guest designers, and they've really expanded their lines and the colors. And the other thing they've done that's a real nice thing for us, which is also helping a lot of the young collectors, is they went and put all their old catalogs online. So you can look up all your Blanco Glass by going to Blanco.com, which is pretty great. And so this particular piece is the only piece of Blanco I had to bring today. This is the lamp, and the reason I took the shade off is so that you can see this harp. Original Blanco lamps had this style harp where you could open it up, and you can actually, this one's been on so long, there we go. It will actually adjust in heights depending what kind of the heights shake you wanted to put on it. And so they are definitely more valuable if you can find them with that piece on them. The decanters in particular the decanters are so popular, I have none in stock. So it's interesting. You notice a lot of these are relatively contemporary pieces in our view, but that's where a lot of the new collectors are starting because this is their nostalgia. This is what their grandparents had. Because all of you folks who were collecting 30 years ago were buying this, and this is what they saw you bring into the house. And now they want it too, which is really fun. Murano glass, absolutely, or Venetian glass. I'm always trying to educate people that not everything that's good came from the island of Murano, that there were lots of Venetian blowers on the mainland that were good too. This is a genuine piece. One of the problems with Murano, as you probably are aware, since you're all glass fans, is that we are seeing, especially with the little round red label, they are sticking that label on everything made all over the world. China, Poland, doesn't matter. It's Murano. And they actually have pictures of unscrupulous shop owners in Italy peeling the stickers off and putting them on things that they're taking out of the boxes that say made in Poland right on them. So we are, again, it's all education. We're trying to educate the younger people to know that certain labels are not legit. That's definitely a legit piece from the 70s. I remember doing Rain of Glass, and I brought a piece that looked like this, and I had a dealer say, orange? Who would ever want orange? That's ugly. Well, this was 30 years ago, and I said, no, people my age like it. And they just looked at me like I was from outer space. Well, orange is popular now. These pieces at that time, I was selling for about $20. Well, now they're selling for $40 to $50. What we're seeing in Depression glass right now, they don't really understand elegant glass. We're talking about fire polishing and why it's good quality, but a lot of it's clear and a lot of the focus with younger collectors is towards color. But anything green depression, will sell again because it glows under a black light. It's got traces of uranium. I can't remember if it's uranium salt or uranium oxide, but those are the two things they put in, and anything that lights under a black light. And that's really great because it's the way we're getting them interested in depression glass. And then we show them, oh, you know, they need that in pink too, really? And so it's a way that we get people excited again. Pyrex, super popular. Anything Pyrex. These are very basic. I passed these up dozens of times in my early days in thrift stores when they were 50 cents a piece. Now they're about $25 a bottle. Wow. Even I brought these because I sold all the other Pyrex I had at the last show. But even these primary colors from the 80s with the clear bottoms are starting to sell. If it says Pyrex, there is a customer out there. Another thing, in addition to paperweights, is we are starting to see interest in orbs and ornaments. This one happens to be original Mount St. Helens ash glass from about 1990, made in Centralia. He was the patent holder. Many other companies quickly cheated and copied his patent, but this is one of the original ones. And there is definitely, I know a woman in her 30s, she is trying to amass a collection of various things made out of Mount St. Helens ash because she wants to write a book about Mount St. Helens ash collectibles. And I thought, what a great idea. And this is because she was very, very little when it happened. So it's a big thing in her mind. And I thought, you know, that's how new interest comes along. As far as other kitchen glass, they love sets that are in caddies. And funnily enough, on the one hand, it's very hard to sell china and porcelain to younger people if it has gold in it, because you can't microwave it. You're not supposed to put it in your dishwasher. But for some reason, if it's barware, they don't mind to do the extra work to take care of it because it's fancy. And one thing I'm hearing from a lot of younger people, you're seeing a lot of modernism on the table. Well, we're going to get to that end of the table where it's less so. A lot of people who are 30 and 40 years old today have grown up in a world where everything is IKEA. Everything is basic. Mid-century modern has done very collectible, and a lot of houses, just as they did when mid-century modern was the new thing, had turned into boxes with boxes and boxes. And I'm hearing people, my niece is 35 years old. She bought a Victorian balloon back chair. I said, that's surprising. And she said, well, I was with my friend. She had me over to her house. I'd never seen her house before. And I walked in and she had the same exact living room with the same exact furniture that I did. And I said, wow, we must have the same taste. And her friend looked at her and said, I'm so bored of this. I want something fancy. And my niece said, I thought about it and I want something fancy too. I'm tired of all this plain stuff. So cycles change. Cocktail related, very popular. This used to be a $25 decanter all day long. It's now a $40 decanter all day long. Glass animals, obviously cuteness and what it is make a difference. Cats, I got a couple of Fenton cats here. One thing about Fenton is the younger collectors are paying attention to the decorators a lot more than I used to do. Yeah. And there are a couple in particular that they're really looking for, which I do not have with me today. But they are obviously Louise Byford, because she was the woman who started the decorating with Fenton and trained most of the decorators. Her things go for a premium. Also, Michael Dickerson. He became a very sought-after artist in his own right, helped restore a basilica, has a name as an artist after Fenton, and so his pieces are selling for a premium, even if it's the same stock pattern that other artists were doing there. So we have learned to look for that sort of thing. I don't have any big ones right now, so I brought the one I have. This is Bartle Collins, which actually Bartle Collins made a ton of stuff in their Oklahoma factory, but it was mostly drinkware and advertising pieces, not things you would look at and think, oh, that's a big deal. But this is technically a swung vase. And of course, swung vases, those big tall things that we see, were done because they hold it in the mold and then they turn it upside down and swing it back and forth. And that's why they're different sizes and shapes, because it all depended how much they elongated. Young people think they're very fascinating, and they are paying big money, especially for the big L.E. Smiths. There seem to be this size, this size, this size. Pieces this size, little skinny ones like Fenton pieces or biking pieces used to sell for $20 or $25. They're selling for $50 and $75 now, and then you go up from there. If you have a piece that's 40 inches or taller, you might be looking at over $1,000 for it now. That's another one. When I brought a lavender piece, which is a heart color define, to the Fenton Finders Glass show, and I set it down, and the dealer on one side of me said, "Why would you bring that horrible, ugly thing?" And the dealer on the other side, who was in her 80s, looked at me and said, "I love that color, I'll take it." So somebody back then got it, but now everybody is really, really into that.
They're really selling?
They're really selling.
They are?
I'm surprised. I have a friend who, his name is Mike. His site, and this is a terrible pun, but he thought it was very clever, is Well Swung, because he does lots of swung vases, and he just sold $20,000 worth to somebody in Pennsylvania. They get their entire window full of it. And he said it took him a year to amass that many. That is another thing like Pyrex, where we've seen the prices go up so far that you think there's got to be a top to this. And I think maybe we're about there. Another thing that has been very popular the past few years that I think hit its top and has come down just a little bit, but are still popular, are fairy lamps. And fairy lamps, to me, it's so fascinating because I remember when we would look at this piece and I'd say, oh yeah, that's a $20 item. And I'd buy them because they were cute. Or sometimes I'd pass them up because I didn't really think much about them, because when I started in the business, I was involved with the Antique Mall in Lafayette, Oregon. And we had a dealer who had all of the ones from England, from the Victorian era, that these were patterned after, and those were selling for a few $100s. And I was like, now, those are the ones to have. Well, I haven't seen one of those for sale in the market in years. This generation thinks these are the ones to have because they all have black lights, and you'll see them at shows running around putting the black light up to see what glows. Well, orange generally has cadmium in it, and amberina does too. And these don't glow bright like a custard glass or a quote-unquote uranium green or Vaseline or canary glass, but the orange has cadmium in it, and the cadmium will glow around the tips and the edges. And there are some people who like that because of this. And so that's why you notice I've got a fair bit of orange, because even though orange is a decorator color, is maybe not as big now as it was 10 years ago, the people who like Blacklight stuff like the orange. Speaking of orange, and speaking of Italian, these are Carlo Moretti. These are selling for good money. They seem rather plain, but they're actually very well balanced when you fold them. And I think that's part of what the interest is that it's something you can use. And it's also nice Italian glass. So these are selling for about $30 or $40 a piece now. I was heartened by the fact this is a nice little, I believe, Bohemian glass painted piece from the Victorian era. Not anything that we really know a whole lot about, but I was excited because I found a piece and I put it online, and I talked about it in one of my videos, and I said, I realize that you folks are not really up on Victorian glass, and this may not be your interest, but I just thought this was a really pretty piece. It wasn't this one, it had some etching and things. And somebody bought it and was like, wow, this is really great. This is my new favorite thing. And now he's got about 20 pieces in his collection. So again, part of it is just talking to people and showing them how wonderful this stuff is. Swarovski. Now, I will say this was an unfortunate example to pull out, because what they now notice is most younger people do not like clowns at all. They are afraid of them. They think they're scary. They think they're creepy. I don't know what it is. So I picked kind of the wrong example, but it's Swarovski. And we are starting to see the Swarovski small figures selling. There's been changes at Swarovski. It's no longer controlled by the original family. They've made some changes as far as their policies. They're not selling crystals on the open market to people to make other things out of anymore. If you want a Swarovski piece, you have to buy it from them. And because of that, collectors are saying, oh, less supply. This is something we should be looking at. So we are seeing interest in that. We're seeing more interest in that, honestly, And we're seeing on these, even though these are gorgeous in my opinion, I just got these when I was driving here. These, I found these in a shop in Nebraska, and these are Leik. Leik is actually a little bit soft in the marketplace right now. And when I went to their showroom in Mexico City, almost everything in the Leik store is in color now. Almost none of it is clear. I was shocked because I'd been to their store on Rodeo Drive 20 years before, and everything was crystal clear and satin, and that's what we do. And now it's the same finish, but it's in pink that looks just like Fostoria pink from the 1920s, and greens and all these other colors, which is interesting to me because it makes me think that might be what brings our elegant depression glass back. Animal figures, I used to not pay much attention to these little flat ones. This one's Viking. Mats Jonasson from Sweden did a lot of these. A lot of them are pretty common, but they are going up in desirability, and a few of them are selling for pretty big money now. I saw Mats Jonasson sell for $175 recently, and I thought, wow, I remember when that would have been a $15 piece. A lot of younger people don't really know Fostoria unless it's this pattern. If it's heirloom,
It's the heirloom.
they get it. Heirloom bittersweet, exactly. Yeah, they like this. They don't understand colony. I sell a little bit of American still, usually to somebody who inherited a family set and is adding to it. But the modern cabins in Fostoria, they will sell. And that brings me to these. Do any of you folks recognize this? I'm hearing a few names. This is actually Chalet Glass from Canada. Both of these pieces are. They hired a couple of designers from Murano to come and help them design these around 1960. They had a gas well up there, and they decided they could develop a glass blowing industry. And they did these really big splashing pieces like this that look like a splash of water or flames in a fire. I have always liked this stuff. Sometimes it's marked. This particular one does have a paper label, and etching on the bottom says Chantilly, which was one of their trade names. And I wanted to show this to you folks because it's something that you might see around here. There was some distribution. I remember when I first lived in Centralia, there was a gift store that still had old stock of theirs for sale as new at the time. And it is something that people in Canada know. It's heavy and difficult to ship. Sometimes the prices are low if they don't know what they have. A lot of it, the first 10 years, like this piece, has Chalet marked on the bottom, but the pieces done in the 1960s have no mark at all. But the young people look at it and say, oh, it's Italian. Well, it's of an Italian design. It's not Italian. And so I had these two pieces and two big baskets at the show in Ohio. And a guy walked right up and said, wow, these are fantastic. What are they? And I told him what I just told you. And he said, I'll take that one and that one. And it was as easy as that. So they're showy and splashy, and you might find them around here. Then we get into more traditional pieces. There is interest in traditional design with younger people, like the story I told about, ooh, I want fancy and tired of all the plain stuff. And one of the things they really love is Fenton, and they especially like the artware that was done later in the production. Now, obviously, the Burmese part of the attraction is that, oh, yes, it glows under a black light, and so the blacklight collectors, I had one couple come to me at the show in Michigan. They started collecting 4 years ago, and I said, oh, you must be getting a good collection now, and they took out their phone, and they showed me a video of their living room. Showcase after showcase after showcase after showcase after showcase, all blacklight, glowing green. The entire living room full of it. And I thought, this is our future. But it's not just about that with Fenton for them. They really like the art pieces. They like the limited editions. They like anything that has particular designs on it, like the butterfly is popular. This one, again, with designers, this one is signed on the back, Trudy Mendenhal. Trudy Mendenhal is in her 80s. She is actually still painting, and it's a little bit controversial that she's still painting on Fenton glass. They're buying old Fenton blanks, and then they have to actually do some sort of a process in order for the paint to adhere because the annealing would make it not work otherwise. But she loved painting their stuff and she didn't want to stop. So they're buying blanks. She's stripping enough of the finish to paint a new design and signing it, and they're dating it for today. And the finish is different because once they re-anneal it, it's not the same. And so it's not really a reproduction. She's not doing the same thing she did for Fenton, but she's still working with Fenton Glass. And there are people who are really interested in that and who are collecting her old pieces because they've seen her new pieces. So controversy, yes. But on the other hand, it's keeping her alive at 85 years old. She can pay her bills, and she loves doing it. And the younger collectors think it's interesting. It's not just about color. I did sell a mulberry piece. We all know mulberry sells. But sometimes it's just about the way it looks. This piece, because it has its base, look at the difference. It's a nice piece this big, but when you put the base underneath it, suddenly it's very striking, and the bottom brings out the top, and it just changes the way it looks. And I'm seeing younger customers are really attracted to this sort of thing. There is another customer interested in Fenton as well. And that customer is not in the United States. There are a bunch of people interested in Fenton who live in China. And the reason is, right at the end, when Fenton tried to do the Fenton International line, the pieces were really just not the caliber, but it introduced the Fenton name to the Chinese. And now the Chinese, they really like anything with glass Brit on it. If it has this sort of a coating on it, the chances are, if I put it online, it's a 50-50 chance whether it stays in this country or goes to some sort of a box in Portland with a Chinese name and gets forwarded on to China. And they are paying big money for some of these pieces. Outrageous money for some of these pieces. The one thing I will say about the Chinese buyers is that they are interested, they are sophisticated, and they quickly learn all the history and everything that they can about this stuff. They are really serious collectors. They're not just sort of, oh, that's cute, I'll buy one and see what I think later. They are into it big time. So on the one hand, it's great for resellers. On the other hand, for collectors, it's like, oh, wow, some of our stuff is going to disappear and it's not going to be here anymore. So if you're a collector here in the States and that particular style is for you, there may be something that you want to get a hold of now because it may be gone sooner or later. And then that brings us to these last things. What's different about these than everything else on the table?
They're cut.
They're cut and they're clear. A lot of the emphasis is on color right now with the younger collectors. And I got interested because I had a fellow across the street from me in Kentucky who said, my wife's passed on. She has this big collection of cut pieces. They were in her family back in the 1920s. I'm moving out to the farm. We have animals coming and going. I can't have her cut crystal. Would you be willing to sell this collection for me? And I thought, oh boy, I really like it. But, you know, cut crystal, boy, that really sort of started to go out of favor with collectors when I started in the business 35 years ago. Is there a customer for this? I asked a bunch of dealers I'd known for years, and they're like, no one wants that stuff anymore. So I go on eBay, and yeah, it's selling every day. Lots of pieces of this are selling every day. They're not selling for $200 anymore. They might be selling for $65 or $75 or $85, but they are selling, and it's fancy, it's traditional. And I thought, I wonder if this is really a phenomenon. And then I talked to a friend of mine who runs the regular old shopping mall in Yakima, Washington, and she's a collector of glass. She loves cut crystal, and we have bemoaned the fact together that her grandmother's crystal just isn't worth what it used to be, and why don't they appreciate this? She walked into her marketing director's office. Her marketing director's 32, his assistant is 30. They're both about to get married, and they were both talking about what crystal pattern they were going to have and how they both want Waterford crystal. When you see 10 swung bases that are orange in a row, after a while, it's just sort of a blur. You put one clear piece in the middle. I have a friend who was doing a show, and he had a bunch of swung bases, and one of them was clear, and he stuck it right in the middle, and it captured the colors of all the ones around it, and everybody's eye went right to the clear one. And I thought, this is how people are going to start being interested in clear glass again, because they're going to see how it mixes with other things. And if they have a large collection, it's a break for the eye. And the other thing that's going to get them going is if it has a sterling surround, because the price of sterling is way up. And I watch resellers walk right by these things because, oh, that's clear. And I say, you better look at the bottom, because if it's sterling, that's $25 or $30 worth. Of sterling's $30 an ounce now. This is probably an ounce of sterling. So right there, it's worth $30 before you even start talking about what the object is. Everything does come around again, but it's just interesting to see what the younger people are thinking is exciting today. And I'm having a really good time trying to find those things for them and then lure them into all of the other wonderful stuff that we all know exists. So with that, I'll throw it open to any questions anybody has or comments or thoughts. Yes.
I was wondering why is the price of Pyrex so high? You can still buy it in the store. I went to this vintage thing, and then they had some beautiful colors that I didn't even know they made, and so pretty pink. I like pink like B. And I thought, I get this, and I looked at the price, and I said, what? I ain't paying that. Why were people paying such outrageous prices for them?
I think you hit it on the head, and I think that is where Pyrex has gotten, is that new people or people who haven't thought about it before are looking at it and looking at today's prices and saying, oh, I can't start this, it's too much. But the reason it got to that point, I've done, probably 100+ estate sales in my time now. I can't think of one where there wasn't Pyrex in the house. Everybody grew up with it. Everybody knows what it is. Everybody knows it's pretty good quality and that you can use it in a lot of versatile ways. And so that's what really started the collecting of it. And like you said, you haven't seen the pink before because that's been out of production. So what started the collectors is, wow, this is interesting and it's functional and I can use it and I remember it. This is great. What's happened is that, everybody has decided this is the next great thing. I bought a collection out in May, and by July I had sold every piece. I also priced mine about 15% or 20% below what I saw people pricing it at, because in my estimation, just what you said, new people are going to be afraid to get into it. And at some point it will level out because of that. But I don't think it's going to go away as a collectible because it's so memorable to so many people.
It's just that more of the other collectors want things that they use, like a refrigerator dishes and things like that.
I especially think my generation, I'm Generation X, so I'm in my late 50s, and a lot of people in their 40s and 50s are my generation, and that's when a lot of the most serious collecting starts, because kids are older, you probably make a little more money, there's been enough time that there's some nostalgia, and I think that my generation, and particularly people in certain regions of the country, here in the Northwest, very practical, pragmatic customers. And so, yes, I think that's why you see a lot of interest in the kitchen stuff, because, it's neat and we can use it. I can justify this because I can use it. Maybe I don't need 6 vases, but I could use 6 bowls or a reamer or a cocktail shaker or a set of glasses.
You didn't say anything about the Lundberg project boss to say.
No, I didn't, and I should have actually. These are Arco Rock, and I bring up Arco Rock because we see this a lot. It's in a lot of thrift stores. A lot of us saw this back in the 1970s when they were popular. They do a line called Arches that I really like, where there's little arches that are clear, so when you pour the liquid in, you see the color of the liquid plus the red. These are the flat bottom pieces. The ruby red pieces are out of production, and some other Arco Rock is also out of production. So some of it is collectible, but it's a name that's continued to produce, and they're a very large producer. So not a ton of their stuff is really, really popular, but that line sells pretty consistently.
Who got this red and amber piece?
Oh, yes, I didn't mention that either. The reason I put this out is that this is Moon and Stars, and it's an L.A. Smith pattern. Younger people really like L.E. Smith, and they really know L.E. Smith, and they can tell you that that swung base is not L.E. Smith, it's Viking or vice versa. And Moon and Stars is one of those patterns. Again, in the late 60s and early 70s, I remember it being everywhere. And it's heavy and it's good quality, and a lot of it has lasted, but a lot of people remember this. I remember when I was a kid, and you walked into the Country Cousin and they had a candy shop, and all of the stick candy was in green and amber L.A. Smith Riemann Stars jars on the counter. It was just everywhere. And it's one of those things, again, like Pyrex. You think, well, this is common. It was all over the place. Why would it be a collectible now? Well, depression glass was common and all over the place, too. We'd like to think that, oh, people collect really wonderful, obscure things that are one of a kind like this. But the truth is, a lot of people collect stuff that everybody used every day because it's what's familiar, and that's what we saw mom and grandma use, and that's why we're interested. So that's why the Ming Stars.
Do you pick the whole Blacklight thing as kind of a phase?
I do think it's a phase, only because, like the story I told you about the people who came to the show, and 4 years ago they bought their first piece and now they have an entire living room full of it. I mean, we all get excited about stuff, and I'm sure all of you in your collecting at some point got really excited about something, bought a ton of it, then you start to refine your tastes a little bit. Oh, now I know that the really good stuff is this, and these things are common, and you start to sell the common things or give them away, and you keep the stuff that's more interesting. And I'm sure at some point, because so many people have been running around with black lights, that they're going to have cases and cases full of it, and then they're going to say, well, you know what? I don't necessarily care so much about the clear green reamer. I'll take this piece because it has a pattern, and when I show the black light on it, the pattern shows up in my case better, and it'll start to be more about that. But I think we're still on the tail end of, I'll take anything in sight because this fascinates me, so I'll take it all. As we look around the room, a lot of us have known each other a long time, and we do realize that all things go up, go down, and it's just a cycle, but it's great to see the enthusiasm, and then it matures, and then people, they get more refined and they buy better stuff, or they want to add something new to it. They are starting to discover certain Victorian pieces that were made with antimony and other chemicals that we don't use in glass these days. So there's certain Victorian blue glass that glows, and they're like, oh, didn't know about that. So there's places to lead.
My niece is 35 and she's getting married next September, and they're looking for, I was shocked to hear this, they want those glass pots, cornware.
Yep. Corning is a really interesting thing. We are starting to see people collecting, and they'll collect the big heavy kitchenware, the cornflower glue and all of that. But yes, they do want some of the clear Corning pots. And the reason was that Corning was really scientific about the way that they made glass. So those clear pots are very thin and lightweight and easy to use, but they could take a ton of heat. It is very hard to break them. And we are seeing Corel ware discontinue patterns starting to sell because you can put it in the microwave. It doesn't have any toxic chemicals in it. You can put it in the dishwasher. It stands up really well, and it's thin and lightweight. And I am seeing older people who are moving into RVs buying sets of Corel because it doesn't weigh the thing down, and they can have a nice vintage set of dishes that they can take with them. A stack of Corel plates weighs about the same as maybe 2 Desert Rose plates. And I'm seeing younger people who, just in terms of the practicality of it. And so, yeah, you're right. Corning is a thing. Yes.
You talk about the amount that people collect and so on, and every once in a while you run into, we have some friends that have collected Fenton mice, hand-painted. They have over 600. And you can go to their house and see it, and it's the most incredible thing that you've ever seen. And he has paid big bucks, and none of them are duplicates.
It is amazing how, but for all of the stuff that they did where they had a bunch of people on the line, you know, the blue rose on the blue cat, you don't see it every day, but you're going to see this piece many times in your lifetime if you look around at a lot of Fenton. On the other hand, there are certain variations, like this basket. She painted the bird this way on this basket, but then there's the handlers. The handles were applied by different people, and at a certain point, Fenton developed a different style attachment for each handler. So you might be able to have 6 of these, and no 2 would be alike because they all have some variation like that. And for some collectors, having all the variation is what is a lot of the fun for them. Some people just want one of each type, and some want all of one thing that was made. And of course, we love those collectors. And it's fun. I love going into a house and just seeing a really great, amazing collection.
I read across there's a piece that I like. It's a ghost, and they have put like a skeleton on it. And I found one that's going to be big for like 2 years. It's missing an Anne. And somebody else had mentioned in another one that was sold a few months ago about paint flaking off.
Yes. If the paint's flaking off, the person who did it is someone who might be a very good decorator, but they're an amateur and they don't know how to treat the glass properly before they do it. Trudy Mendenhal, when she does the contemporary painting on the old Fenton blanks, first of all, which I think is very respectful of her, she only does it on pretty basic pieces. She does it on silver crest, something you've seen a million times and you know there's 50,000 more in every antique mall. She's not taking something rare and then defacing it. But the thing that she explained to me is that they have to treat it to clear the exterior of the glass off in order for the paint to adhere correctly. And then they have to fire it again at a low heat in a home kiln to make sure that it stays on, because otherwise it will flake off. If you just take a piece that's already been annealed, well, it has a surface coating and you paint on it and it's like, you would see in the 30s, there's lots of Great Depression glass where somebody painted a cute design and it's half missing. That's because somebody just painted a cute design on it. But if you treat it correctly, that won't happen. Well, this was so much fun. Thank you all very, very much.
If you enjoyed this video, check out this one. Also, click thumbs up to like this video and check the description for information about our Patreon, our memberships. We've got a lot of different levels with different perks and bonus videos and early content. Also, please do check out our website, theantiquenomad.com, for appraisal help. And we'll see you again for more adventures in the antique and vintage community soon. Bye for now.